Hello, I'm Justin Warland. I'm a senior correspondent at Time Magazine, where I write about climate change and with a focus on policy, politics, and how it's reshaping the world around us. I'm thrilled to be moderating this discussion on sustainable recovery with this, which should be a very interesting panel. Dr. Ilhan Kadri is the CEO and chairman of the executive committee at Solvay, which is a materials, chemicals, and solutions company. And she has a long and distinguished career with a range of multinationals in this area, as well as Tom Bell, who's the chairman and CEO of RollsRoyce North America, as well as president of RollsRoyce Defense, and has a long and distinguished career in aviation and defense as well. It's a really interesting time for this discussion, with dynamic discussion happening on sustainability, on climate, and of course, how these things piece together with the economic recovery that is necessary across the globe. Just to set the stage, I'm going to ask each of them a bit about what their company is doing in this area, and then we'll get into some broader discussion. And I'll start with Dr. Kadri. Solvay launched a program called One Planet last year, which is focused on climate, resources, and the quality of life, and thinking about how to improve them with a circular ecosystem. So can you just tell us a bit about what this program is and how it works?
Yeah, well, of course, first, thank you, Justin. I'm very delighted to be here with you today. To jump right into the topic, indeed, we released last year Solvay Sustainability Roadmap we call Solvay One Planet. It's in fact an integral part of our business strategies, and it impacts, by the way, the pocket. So our bonuses for all employees, both on the yearly variable remuneration, including my pockets, and the long-term incentive on the greenhouse gas emission reduction. So concretely, Solvay One Planet is structured around the three pillars you just mentioned: climate, resources, and better life. And we have 10 measurables goals to be achieved by 2030, but we report every year the non-financials, performance along with our financial performance. And it was first year we disclosed it in our annual reports. To give you some example on the climate front, and actually I was listening to the former panel to make the link with the energy. We are rolling out energy transition plans across all our business and adapting to local markets and regulation. Last February, we joined the Paris Agreement and we joined the Science-Based Target in October. To give you an idea, our trajectory between 14 and 18 was shy of -1% savings every year on greenhouse gas emissions. And in 19 and 20, since the launch of Solvay One Planet, we reached 4% structural savings, which is a 2x the average annual savings required by the Paris Accords. So an example, the United States, we have three businesses which switched to 100% solar power since January 2021. We have 250,000 solar panels now in the US, and we're amongst the top 10 US manufacturing companies with solar capacity. To give you an idea, this represents 15,000 homes of annual power. And while we power our factories in the area, we cut the equivalent of 80 kilotons of CO2 emissions. So it's great. Our customers, they love it. Your smartphone you are using, it's powered by solar energy thanks to Solvay inside. And like the US, we have 28 different energy transitions around the world, which we will be active by in the next 18 months. And this will allow Solvay globally to reduce emissions by 1.8 million tons of carbon dioxide. And it will be completed fully in the next 3 years. The second pillar, resources. You said, Justin, we are committed to accelerate the circular economy and to increase the sustainable solutions, to 65% of the group sales. Let me give you an example I love. It's our natural vanillin products. We use rice husk, which is discarded. This is the skin of the rice, right, which goes to the bin. And we produce natural vanillin, which gives taste to your birthday cakes. So when you reuse the waste, it's not a waste anymore. And that's the future of circularity. It's just the beginning. And we have now a growing platform around EV batteries as we enable lightweight and membranes in electrical batteries. We have green hydrogen growth platform and thermoplastic composite, which is recyclable. And the last one to finish with is Better Life. Is about people, obviously. Which is very close to our hearts. A simple example around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We extended the parental leave early January this year to all co-parents to 16 weeks, regardless where you work, your country of origin or work, and regardless of the gender and the sexual orientation. So that's Solvay One Planet. It's a roadmap. It's part of who we are. It's part of our business strategies. It impacts the pockets. It's a journey. It's a transformation. It actually addressed the sense of urgency on climate, scarcity of resources, and of course it has to be profitable, and for us it is profitable, and it's the starting point. So I stop here, as I know I will have the opportunity to expand on this later. Back to you, Justin.
Yes, there are a lot of points to pick up on in there, but for now let's turn to Tom, and just to ask, Rolls-Royce has set a 2050 net zero target within your operations. Could you just tell us a bit about, what this looks like? How do you plan for that? And how has this changed the way you think about your business model?
Thank you, Justin. Much appreciated, and like my colleague, thrilled to be with you all today. At Rolls-Royce, we hold ourselves a high chinning bar when it comes to all of these things, under the guise of we are pioneers of the power that matters. And one of the reasons that vision statement for me makes so much sense is the inherent question in the statement, pioneers of the power that matters, is matters to who? Matters to the world, matters to our customers. And so as we emerge from this global pandemic and we talk about global growth again, it's critical that we are providers of the power that matters for the world. And so in that regard, you're absolutely right. We've held ourselves to a very high hurdle of being carbon neutral in our operations by 2030. And by 2050, making sure that all of our products are capable of being run on either sustainable alternate fuels or are zero carbon themselves. So we've got two very near-term objectives. 2050 in our industry is very near term. 2030, be carbon neutral ourselves in our operations. 2050, make sure all of our products can be carbon neutral. How are we doing in that regard? Well, we're making great progress. We've installed tens of thousands of solar panels in our facilities globally. We're about to cut the ribbon on a microgrid in our manufacturing facility in Bristol, England. Our manufacturing facility in Aiken, South Carolina is not too far behind that in terms of a sustainable microgrid. And then we're committed to, in the next couple of years, our major manufacturing plant in Indianapolis being carbon neutral. And so as you can see, we're taking a multi-pronged approach to make sure we're responsible citizens, and then we're making sure that our products are responsible so that our customers can be responsible to their customers.
Well, well, first off, my apologies for misstating the year. Is a significant difference. Well, I want to ask a bit about, Dr. Kadri, you finished with this point about what has to be profitable, and Tom, you spoke, about the reasons, the powerful reasons behind this. But just to ask a little more, what do you see as the most significant drivers of these changes for you? I mean, there's a lot of different stakeholders and a lot of different reasons why you might want to pursue such changes, but it would be interesting to see what you think is driving it. And we can just start with Dr. Kadri and then move forward.
Yeah, well, listen, I think I believe that more and more customers, they want it, and the customers, they want this. Our employees, right? The millennials, I'm not a millennial anymore, but I'm a mother, right? Our kids, they want it, right? So you say that the stakeholders are here, and I believe in the three Ps, the people, planet, and the profits. it's not in contradiction. That's how we see it at Solvay. So I believe that the climate, and resources sense of urgency and action is good for the economy and for the business. Look at the electrification, right? I mean, when Tesla started, many didn't believe it's going to be a great success. And look at how the EV and technologies and electrification is growing rapidly, including during COVID-19. That was the largest, fastest growing business we had last year in Q4 and still booming in Q1. So lowering the carbon footprint of products and solution is becoming a selling point for brand owners and in the value chain across automotive, consumer goods and so on. And touching upon, the climate urgency earlier, facts are talking for themselves. We have reached a point of no return, and this is really reshaping the consumers' ask and the politics globally. So, at the end of the day, we have one planet, like Solvay one planet, and then there will be no jobs on a dead planet. So we believe that, it's now comes the time to really act, and it's an opportunity again for innovations, for science, because we are a science-based company. We want to lead on those 3 Ps. Joining, for example, the Science-Based Targets Initiative, we did it last October after we announced the sustainability roadmap. It's a bigger ambition than us. We don't know yet how to do it all, right? Like we pledged that we're exiting coal, which is a big deal for Solvay because this company started 160 years ago with coal as a primary energy. And you talked about energy across the world. There's still a lot of usage of coal and investments in coal, and we are exiting coal. And we just announced a few weeks ago that our first plants, exiting coal is now on stream through biomass, so waste wood chips, right? Which is also good for the planet, but profitable because we engage with the German authorities and we had a public-private collaboration in building the ecosystem. And the last but not the least, obviously the suppliers, like many companies, we are adopting the SBTi, what we call scope 3, which means that we are assessing the emission across the value chain, from cradle to grave or to cradle, from suppliers to customers. That's important. And customers we have, as a stakeholder, I have the beautiful example in the US, while a US client requires that the power consumed in our manufacturing process come from renewable, and this is why we invested in solar, and we became one of the largest solar farmer in the US. And finally, investors, let's not forget them. Climate-related, challenges are becoming a risk, and they want to de-risk their investments, but they see it also as an opportunity mid and long term. So it's a hot topic, frankly. Since I joined the company 2 years ago, and after the Davos, live meeting in Switzerland in January, just before the lockdown, where climate was a hot topic, all investors are talking about ESG matters and about climate. So investors choose us according to certain criteria, like ESG ones, but we also choose them as well. And it's a two-way process where the environment, the social, and the governance pillars are key. Back to you.
Absolutely. Well, Tom, what are your thoughts on this question?
Well, Justin, thank you. So like all industries right now, I think across all of Rolls-Royce's markets, we're seeing tremendous interest and pull for sustainable solutions. To step back a little bit, we're in 3 broad markets: civil aviation and business jets. So we make the engines for 787s or A350s or Gulfstream business jets. We're in power systems, which makes reciprocal engines for land moving equipment, rail trains, and standby power for Amazon, Google, and like that. And then defense. In all of those markets, we're seeing an unstoppable drive toward sustainable solutions. Our customers, be they the business jet customers or the airlines, they want engines that can fly on sustainable aviation fuels. Our customers in rail and our customers for standby power, they want non-fossil fuel alternatives to provide those powers for their needs. And we're invested heavily in hybrid trains, and we're invested heavily in microgrids and bringing about future alternative opportunities for those same standby power and microgrids to be powered by non-fossil fuels. And even in defense, where you might think that the defense customer is lagging society, we see in our core markets defense customers who are eager to have a conversation about a decarbonization future and how that decarbonized future might give them the strategic advantage of untethering them from the very fragile, very costly fossil fuel supply chain on which they rely today. And so across all of our markets, Justin, we see customers not only receptive to our conversations about pioneering the power that matters and how that changes over time, but we see them actually starting to pull on us and say, how can you bring that about faster? How can we help you? How can we partner with you to make sure that we bring about this in a globally leading fashion, not a lagging fashion and catching up?
Well, very interesting answers. One thing, you know, investors, customers, et cetera, we heard from both of you, but not so much about government. And I'm curious, you know, obviously the chamber is a policy shop, and you know, what role government should play in your view in facilitating and also setting rules of the road along this transition. And so I guess, you know, we're in a very dynamic policy space and in time right now, obviously. And I'm just curious what you would like to see in that regard, and perhaps what you wouldn't want to see in that regard. And maybe we'll start with Tom in the US, and then we can look at the global picture after that.
Yeah, that's fair. We'll go for me first.
Sorry,
I have three things that I would mention, Justin, that I think are going to be critical to bring about as rapid change as possible in our industries. First is incentivizing these sustainable alternate fuel production. It's wonderful that, you know, yesterday an Air France jet left Europe and landed in Canada on sustainable aviation fuel. In this particular case, it was kitchen grease that was repurposed. But let's be honest, we all don't want to eat enough French fries to feed that stock, right? That's not healthy for the world. And so how are we going to really bring to scale sustainable alternate fuels for all the gas turbines that we have today and all the automobiles that we have today? It's not beyond the wit of man. It just requires scale. In this regard, the FAA and NASA, there should be policies for them to be investing in and leading us through how to create this sustainable future in a more robust way than natural. And then last but not least, we really do need our tax code to ensure there's incentive for investment in the technologies that are going to both get us to our 2030 goals, but also our 2050 goals. So standardization, some help with governments like NASA and FAA, and then of course some tax regimes that help us invest in this very, very noble future.
Well, that's great. That's I guess, you know, Dr. Kadri, I'd ask you the same question. I'm curious your thoughts about the US, but also if you want to think a little bit about, I mean, obviously both companies are global companies, but I'd be curious, you know, you're based in Brussels, and, you know, to get your sort of global assessment as well.
Yeah, indeed. RollsRoyce is really a global company, well distributed, 1/3 in Europe, 1/3 in Americas, mainly the US, and 1/3 in Asia. Well, first of all, as a general first step, we have signed the open letter launched by the We Mean Business, right, with 400 other business and investors calling for a reduction of US emissions by at least 50% by 2030, with early climate neutrality as a North Star. So very happy that the Biden administration is back to the Paris Accords, and this is aligned with our Solve One Planet agreement. Second, something probably more controversial in the US is the carbon pricing. Understand that this is not universally supported by all stakeholders in the US, but let me share with you why we support it if done correctly, especially where the program is transparent, technology neutral, market-based, and provides regulatory certainty to stakeholders and ensure a level playing field. The existence of carbon pricing in the EU has enabled us, as I mentioned earlier, to switch one of our oldest plants in Germany, Rheinberg, from coal to biomass fired, making the site now, you know, the new global benchmark for low carbon soda ash. And carbon pricing, when I joined the company 2 years ago, was around the 20-ish euro a ton. Now it's at 50. So it's really, you know, supporting and accelerating innovation. The other example is electric batteries or vehicles or hybrids. At this stage in the technology evolution, we see real value in comprehensive policy to encourage adoption of emission-reducing technologies. The good news is that leapfrogging and disrupting, you know, the giant automotive, the old school, has happened from the US. So very interesting. And we agree with the American Chemistry Council that the US should encourage deployment of EVs and recharging infrastructure, because we need infrastructure, right? I mean, we cannot do it alone. We lighten a car. We are a key part in the battery, in the EVs. We are in aerospace, by the way, as well, like RollsRoyce, but we need infrastructure. And this is where governments and policies can support to develop, you know, infrastructure, local for local strategy, wherever possible. We certainly support policies aimed at encouraging the purchase of EVs as well, right? And benefiting and targeting public funding to encourage private sector investments, including in the US. And then more holistically, policies that encompasses the entire life cycle should be a goal. I think not only focusing on reducing greenhouse gas emissions at the tailpipe for vehicles, but also looking at the end of life, like recycling batteries, where we can stop just wasting and producing products and putting them in the bin. You know, we don't throw our textile and our costumes, we use them. Why not reimagining and reinventing products to have a second life? And this is the new innovation, and it's more than recycling, it's really creating this circular economy. So I believe that the world is in the beginning stage of this transformation. Some people call it transition. I like to call it transformation. We need energy, we need firm policies, we need infrastructure, we need support to bring those innovation and to make them at scale. Like green hydrogen, we are, you know, a key enabler to go from gray to blue to green, but green is based 100% on renewables. It has to be more cost competitive and at scale. And for that, we need an ecosystem, we need the authorities, we need other players, because again, we cannot do it alone. And the US public authorities, but also in Europe with the Green Deal, will find a great partner in the chemical industry in general, because I used to call it the mother of all industries, right? Because which no matter how you slice it, it will play a pivotal role in ensuring US competitiveness and the sustainable developments and manufacturing, you know, innovations like EVs and hydrogen in the future.
Well, because I directed that question about the global picture, I just wanted to ask Tom, do you have anything to add on the sort of global picture, you know, beyond the US that I asked earlier, the regulatory picture?
Well, it's not so much regulatory as I would pick up on standardization. Obviously, you know, the airplanes we power, the Airbus and Boeing airplanes we power, they don't stay within a country very often. They go from country to country. And so if we're going to reach this objective of a sustainable future, and you accept the fact that you can't do those flights on electrical or hybrid power in the near term, the technology is not going to be there for that. The answer is these sustainable alternate fuels. But to do that, ICAO and our international regulatory bodies that have helped us create one of the safest travel means on the face of the earth have a role to play in ensuring that the global standards about these sustainable alternate fuels is there, so that when the jet touches down in a foreign country, thus they can also fuel up with a compatible fuel there, as opposed to within one nation. Like most things about sustainable futures, it's never in the confines of any one country. It is a global problem, and so it requires global scale, global cooperation, and global standards for setting these standards for the fuels.
Well, we have just under 5 minutes remaining, and I figured I might just ask, for a little bit of reflection, thinking, the last 5 years have been incredibly dynamic in the way in which sustainability has risen, everywhere. And I'm just curious, if you were to look into your crystal ball and think about your business, think about your business's engagement in the policy space, but just broadly to think about what do you think the next 5 years will look like on sustainability, and what should it look like? And if you just a quick 2-minute answer from each of you would be really appreciated. And we can start with Doc. Oh, go ahead, Tom. Yes, sorry.
I'll go first, just since I am. If we look back 5 years, we didn't have the statement "pioneering the power that matters." That's new. And it was created as we started to think forward toward a future that was going to demand more sustainable solutions for our growth and for the planet's growth. If I think about the last 18 months and what we've gone through with COVID-19, the decimation of some of our core markets has only accelerated our resolve that mission statement and doubling down on pioneering the power that matters is the key to come out of this stronger. And so what have we been doing? We've been investing more and more of our R&D in these technologies. Right now, almost 50% of our R&D dollars are spent on lower or low carbon technologies. And we have a medium-term goal that within very short number of years, 75% of our R&D that we invest in ourselves is going to be for low, lower, or no carbon solutions. And so the last 5 years have been a journey. It's been accelerated by the last 18 months of phase one of this global pandemic. And I believe if we continue to manage ourselves and be bold about the future, it can prove to be a great runway to a better future for all of us.
Excellent.
So you asked 5 years ago, and you may remember Justin, that just a bit longer than 5 years ago, the Paris Accords were launched, right? And at that time, people didn't know how and when and if it's going to be sticky. Now it's becoming a reference, and it's enabled the Green Deals of Europe to happen. So I echo what was said before: is cooperation is key. And I applaud to see US, Europe, Japan, and China, and many more countries agreeing with 2030 targets or early climate neutrality ambitions. Together, these countries represent 50% of the world emissions. This coalition will have a great impact for the people and the planet. And let's hope that the COP26 in November this year is not going to be a disappointment. And we're going to really, craft all together this journey to zero, which is still challenging. We don't know how to do it, but cooperation is an enabler. And the second point in my mind is the global alignment. And as the US looks to delineate, its path to its 2030, 2050 greenhouse gas emission targets, we are hopeful that policymakers will keep in mind how important it is to work with other developed nations, right? And the more aligned these policies are, the better, right? Because we run global companies, we have global assets. It's important for us we have global supply chains, right? To leverage capital investments. So it's extremely important to have more and more these alignments. And finally, is the power of innovation. I think innovation has helped humanity to progress and will reinvent and reimagine progress. We're talking about flying. I mean, we were part of the solar aircraft, which made the world tour without droplets of kerosene with 600 parts of Solvay. And we did that, right? In Q3, we will be part of the electronic air taxi, which will be enabled to carry 4 passengers and 1 pilot at a cruise speed of 240 kilometers per hour. Impressive. So it's not science fiction. And I think innovation, human ingenuity, scientists, this reality will make this reality much closer than we think. And this is just fabulous. Back to you.
Well, thank you to you both. A very interesting discussion, and we're out of time, so I won't recap it, but I feel like there was a lot that I learned and a lot to dig deeper into, so I appreciate it. And with that, I'll conclude the panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.